All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order. If everybody would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good evening. Welcome to our October action meeting in Committee of the Whole. I guess we are. We will be webcasting the meeting tonight, so if you could, we've got a lot of people in the room, so just kind of keep it quiet if you would. Mrs. Ridgway, would you take roll, please?
Mr. Goodwin.
Here.
Mrs. Judge.
Here.
Mrs. Matlack.
Here.
Mrs. Seidel.
Here.
Mrs. Scarpolino.
Here.
Mrs. Schultz.
Here.
Mr. Tomlinson. Dr. Wang.
Here.
Dr. Dickinson.
Here. All right, next up we have the approval of our minutes. This evening we have the regular action meeting dated August 22nd, 2017, September 26th, 2017, and board work session special action meetings dated August 8th, 2017, and September 12th, 2017, executive sessions dated August 22nd, 2017, August 8th, 2017, and September 26th, 2017. Do we have any errors, omissions, additions? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion to adopt? Mrs. Matlack, second. Mrs. Judge. Mrs. Ridgway.
Mr. Goodwin.
Yes.
Mrs. Judge.
Yes to all.
Mrs. Matlack.
Yes to all.
Mrs. Seidel.
I need to abstain from the board work session, special action meeting, and executive session on August 8th. Yes to the rest.
Mrs. Scarpolino.
Yes to all.
Mrs. Schultz.
Yes.
Dr. Wang.
Yes.
Dr. Dickinson.
Yes to all. All right, we'll move into our correspondence. Before I do that, I want to recognize the Board of Education members, candidates, and other candidates for the upcoming November 7th election. We have Mr. Eric Goodwin, Mrs. Carol Matlack, Mrs. Lisa Seidel, Frederick Dante, and Sally Tong. Okay, good luck. For correspondence, I believe Mrs. Judge has something for us.
I just wanted to briefly report on the Garden State Coalition of Schools meeting that I attend monthly. We met on Wednesday, September 27th. Lieutenant Governor Kim Godano, the Republican candidate for New Jersey governor, was scheduled to attend that meeting, but she had a conflict and wasn't able to make it, so she sent Assemblyman Robert Auth, who is a Republican from the 39th District in North Jersey. So he outlined many of the Lieutenant Governor's positions. As you guys know, that there's many superintendents and board members that attend that. There probably was almost 30 people at the meeting. We had a wide-ranging conversation touching many subjects, including funding, charter reform, and special education, and I honestly think Assemblyman Auth walked away with more questions, and he learned more from us than we did of him, since we've know a lot about what both all the candidates are for governor or where they stand. He left with a list of questions, and he asked if he could come back with the answers at a future meeting. So it was a good meeting. It really was a good meeting. And he stayed longer than I anticipated, so it was interesting. And the next Garden State meeting is going to be at school boards in Atlantic City next week. There's going to be a joint Garden State, New Jersey School Boards legislative update session on Wednesday, October 25th from 1 to 2:30. We've done that for the last couple of years. It will be in room 301 for those of you who are attending. The list is not confirmed yet, but there will be a few legislators that we know very well attending, but I don't want to say who yet because not everybody's confirmed. That's my report. Any questions? Not a question. Thank you. Back to you, Dr. Dickinson.
Thank you, Mrs. Judge. Anybody else have correspondence? No? Okay. Turn it over to Dr. Milosh for our presentations this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Dickinson. I'm going to ask Mrs. Wilson to come up to the podium. And before I join her up there, I'm always excited about this night in October where we recognize employees in the district for their continuous years of service to Cherry Hill. So tonight, we're going to be recognizing and honoring 63 employees who have achieved either 20, 25, 30, or 40 years of continuous service to the Cherry Hill Public Schools. And of the 63 employees we'll be honoring tonight, they represent 1,465 years of service to the profession. So, right? So I'm very excited that some of them are able to join us tonight. Mrs. Wilson's going to come up to the microphone. We're going to read off the names of the folks who we believe who are here. And then, folks, as you come up, I will shake your hand, which is an honor for me, and we'll give you the certificate, and we'll have you come around and shake hands with all of the board members and the administrators that are over at the side table. Okay?
And then after we are finished with that part of the recognition, I will meet you all out in the main lobby. We'll take a quick group picture, and you're welcome to come back for the rest of the meeting, or you are free to go if you would prefer to go. So I'm going to read off the names of everyone who checked in with me this evening. If I miss anybody, I'll get you at the end of that. So we'll start with our 20 years of service employees with Karen Barnett. Louis Barros. Michelle Brill. Dina Friedman. Ed Klitz. Kathleen Kohler. Bill Kovnat. Sherry Latanzio. Lori Lousy. Kathleen McKelleney. Lisa Powelson. Mary Radbill. Sorry, I should have said Katie.
Thank you.
Carla Sadaka. And now we're moving on to our 25 years of service with Joanne Cohen. Linda Cherzwiski. Elizabeth Eagle.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ray Hawthorne. Wendy McDermott. Christine Miller. Nancy Paley. Joanna Scott. Susan Ackes.
You should, right? Congratulations.
And now we'll honor our 30-year employees, Angela Sablick. And now, last but not least, 40 years of service, Lynn Kispolsky. Lee Troutman. And Tom Weaver.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
And is there anybody that I missed? Anyone I missed? Okay. Then we will go out front and get a quick picture. Thank you.
Dr. Dickinson, and folks, our next presentation, I'm very excited to introduce Mrs. Faith Holmgren, Mrs. Val Schmid-Sadwin, and Dr. Farah Mahan. They're going to present on the park results from the 2016-2017 administration. So, ladies, if you would approach the podium, we are very excited to see the presentation.
There was confusion on the handouts. My fault, I guess I wasn't with the program. As far as the color handouts for the board, if you received a handout at the CNI meeting, you weren't supposed to get a handout from me, and that's why I ran out. So if anyone at a later time needs a color handout, please let us know and we'll find one for you. Oh, sorry for the confusion, and it's what a way to start the presentation. Okay, the presentation that I'm providing with you tonight basically uses the state template, the template that was provided to us by the state to report the park results. It's a little bit different than what you've seen in the past. There are a lot more tables, there are fewer graphs, but there is a lot of information in this presentation. Having said that, my first slide is not from the state template, but it's something that I felt was important to explain. There's two basic ways that we report the data, and it is on an attending or an accountable school basis. And the attending school is just what it sounds like. It's the school that the child attends. Now, most of the children in our district attend the school based on their residence or their neighborhood. But there are some students that we do place in other schools. If they're within the district, they're called an out-of-residence placement, and we place them in another school for either an ESL program or for a special education program because the program is not offered in the neighborhood school. If we place a student outside of the district for special education program not provided within the district, then we call them out-of-district placements, out-of-district placement students. So the accountable school for these two groups of kids, the out-of-residence placement and the out-of-district placements, the accountable school is actually the neighborhood school or the school where the child would attend based on the residence. For all other students, attending equals accountable. And you're saying, really? This is your first slide. This is the hook to get you guys all excited about the presentation. Yeah, I know, but it's important because we are changing this year. We have changed the way we are presenting the data. In the past, we've reported on an accountable school basis because that's how No Child Left Behind and now ESSA reports the data. In this presentation, we've decided to report on an attending school basis because the building staff only has control over the students that actually attend their school. And some of these out-of-residence and out-of-district placement students, they may never have even entered the school. So we are, in this presentation, reporting results on an attending school basis. And with that, we get to the results. There are 5 performance levels in PARCC. Level 4 and level 5 means that the student is on track for college and career readiness. This first table shows the percentages in each of the 5 different levels for spring 2015 to spring 2017 by grade level down the side. And at the far right, there are 2 columns. The first column at the far right is the change in level 1 or level 2, the lowest levels. And what we would like to see here is lots of down arrows on, so that we would be reducing the kids from the lowest level, meaning that they are increasing and going to an increasing level. And the final column is the change in level 4 and 5, which are your college and on track for college and career ready. We want those arrows to be going up. And as you can see, almost all of for English language arts, almost all of the arrows are going down in level 1 or level 2. Only grade 5 and grade 11 are going up, which is good. And then for level 4 and 5, increasing those percentages of students college and career ready. We want to see lots of up arrows, and we do see all up arrows except for grade 11 and where it is a down arrow, and grade 10 where it is stable. Here's the comparable exhibit for mathematics. Same general format. We would like to see that first of the 2 columns at the end, the down arrows on the level 1 and level 2. We see more of a mixed bag here, some going up, some going down than we did in English language arts. And the final, we want to increase those level 4s and 5s. And again, in mathematics, there are some grade levels where there are improvements and increases in those college and career ready, and some grade levels where it went down. This next slide shows you the changes in the level 1 and level 2 of Cherry Hill versus the state, again for the 2015 to 2017. This is for English language arts. As you see, the state is all reducing those level 1 and level 2 in all grade levels except grade 11. Cherry Hill is reducing the level 1 and level 2 in all grade levels except grade 11 and grade 5. For changes in level 4 and level 5, the college and career readiness, the state is increasing in all grade levels except grade 11, and Cherry Hill as well is increasing in all grade levels except grade 11. Now here we have mathematics, comparable exhibit for mathematics. I just want to make a note that the grade 8 mathematics and grade 7 to a certain extent, but more important in grade 8, does not include the students who took Algebra 1 or geometry at the middle schools. That is a separate category. So here, changes in level 1 and level 2, the state has down arrows, is decreasing those lowest levels in all grade levels and subjects except Algebra 2, and Cherry Hill has some going up and some going down. Changes in level 4 and level 5, the college and career readiness, we want to be increasing all of those. The state has all grade levels and subjects increasing right here, math subjects. And Cherry Hill, again, some grade levels went up and some grade levels went down. The next exhibit is a comparison of the participation rates from spring 2015 to spring 2017. From 2000, and it's for English language arts. We use English language art because every student from grades 3 to 11 is to take the English language arts assessment. For 2015 to 2017, in all grade levels, there is an increase in participation from 2015 to 2017. For 2016 to 2017, there was an increase in participation for all grade levels except grade 11. What we see here is by grade level for the spring 2017, for each of the different levels, how the Cherry Hill percentages compare to the state percentages by grade level going down the side, and for each level going, performance level going across the top, with the final column being the percentage of those students who are level 4 or 5 on track to be college and career ready. Okay, for all grade levels, for all grade levels, the ELA is, the district has higher percentage of students level 4 or 5 than the state in every single grade level, except grade 11. This is a comparable exhibit for mathematics. In here you'll see that all grade levels except for Algebra 2 has higher, sorry, I've lost my train of thought. I've also gotten ahead of myself. All grade levels except grade 8 have higher percentages of students meeting or exceeding expectations than the state. Remember, grade 8 excludes the Algebra 1 and geometry student results of those students that in the middle schools. Now we break it down by schools. To try and fit all of the elementary schools onto one slide, no one would be able to read it. So therefore, I've split the elementary schools in half and alphabetically. And so here we have English Language Arts for 2017 for the first half of the elementary schools alphabetically. All elementary schools have percentages meeting or exceeding expectations as high or higher than the states for English Language Arts. And here's the second half, Night through Woodcrest. And then we have the middle schools. For the middle schools, all middle schools had percentages level 4 or 5 meeting or exceeding expectations all were higher than the state. For the high schools, East was above the state average and West was below the state average. Moving to mathematics, again, we start with the elementary schools. In mathematics, Johnson and Kilmer had lower percentages meeting or exceeding expectations than the state. All other schools, elementary schools, were above the state average. For the middle schools, keeping in mind these middle school math, grade 8, this is middle school grades 6 to 8. It does not include the Algebra 1 and geometry results. Carusi's percentages meeting or exceeding expectations were lower than the state in mathematics, and Beck and Rosa were above. Algebra 1, phenomenal results at the middle schools. The students who met or exceeded expectations, much higher than the state average. For the middle schools. At East and West, they were both below. In geometry, 100% of the middle school students met or exceeded expectations. East is above the state average and West is below the state average. Algebra 2, East had a higher percentage meeting or exceeding than the state, and West was below. Then we move to the exhibit by subgroup. In here, there are differences among the subgroups, but going over to the far right, the percentages in that level 4 or higher group, you can see that there, so this is 2016 to 2017, that progress was made in every subgroup for English language arts except for the English learners. So there was progress made, but there are certainly differences among the subgroups. Here's the comparable exhibit in mathematics. Here it's mixed as far as the change in percentages from 2016 to 2017 for the students meeting or exceeding expectations. And that is the presentation. Are there any questions? Who? Me? Okay. Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay. So, two questions right off the top of my head. I guess I'll do. So for the 100% for geometry for Beck, Carusi, and Rosa, do you know how many kids took the exam, the geometry exam? Because that strikes me odd that it's 100% for all 3 middle schools.
We certainly have the numbers, and I'm saying it does vary somewhat between the middle schools, and I would say it's between like 20 and 35 or something like that.
Between the 3, over the 3 schools?
No,
for each. Okay.
maybe 15 to 25, but I think yeah.
All right, so
it's certainly over 10, and it's certainly over 10, and I would say, and we have the numbers. I would say it's between 15 and 25, depending on what school it is.
Okay.
And Kathy, just remember, so the kids that take geometry in the 8th grade are the ones that successfully complete intro to functions in 7th grade, right? So it's the smallest cohort academically of the kids in the middle school.
Okay. Another question is, well, 5th grade and 11th grade stick out. Do we have a why that they didn't do very well, especially in the earlier part of the presentation?
11th grade is 11. The participation is so low, and those 11th grade students, a lot of them had already met their graduation requirements, so who knows who was actually sitting for the test. It's either the students that haven't passed any other way, which would be adverse selection, or it's the people that like to take tests. And
well, when my son, who graduated in 2016, thank you. I have a headache. I remember him coming home in the 11th grade and saying, some of his friends, who wouldn't be named, answered everything A.
Right.
Or when I was at Garden State, there was a board member that said that he was driving his 9th graders taking the English class, and one of these, this honors kid answered all the questions in French for English, just because he could.
Yeah, right, right,
You know?
right.
So it is really interesting, the stories that you hear.
And I think it will change because
Yes.
as it
Oh, yeah, in
becomes a
2021.
real graduation requirement, I think the students will take it more seriously.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely. So, and this might be something that would be discussed in a Friday packet or whatever, but I am certain there's some administrative concerns because some of these scores are not very good. So that's a question just to throw out there for a future answer. Yeah, because I need to look at this. This is the first time I've seen this, but there is some concern here. And I know Park is controversial, but there are some concerns. Thank you.
yes.
I just wanted to say that it was a concern that was brought up at the committee meeting as well when Mrs. Sadwin did the presentation to us. Yeah.
Yes.
Two questions. One is on the 8th grade. I'm just curious if you have any ideas on that. But I guess more importantly, more generically, what Park has that been proven? Like, so these scores, so you 3, 4, 5. Is there any real evidence that says if you're in a 3, 4, or 5 category, you're going to college versus if you're not? I mean, I don't understand the reasoning, or what's the evidence behind these scorings? Maybe, I don't know if that's a difficult question to answer or not.
Well, the test has only been administered since 2015.
Right.
So, and they have determined, I believe, and people more knowledgeable than myself can correct me if I'm wrong, but, so basically the educators have come up with the standards, and based on the standards, they feel that, if students can be proficient on these standards, then they will be college and career ready. Whether there have not been any studies that have said, well, if in 3rd grade you get a 4 or a 5, then that means that you're gonna ace college and it's not a problem. And you had a question before that.
8th grade math.
8th grade, yes. One thing that I did forget to mention is that in 2016, an additional algebra class was added at the middle schools. So that's one, by taking it from 2015 to 2017 for grade 8 math, in 2015 there were more kids in that lower level grade 8 math class than there were in higher. So you're now taking some of the kids that would have been taking the grade 8 math before, they're now taking algebra and are in the algebra 1 and geometry results, algebra 1 probably. So, there are fewer students, and they're the students that need more instructional support that are left taking the math grade 8. Yes.
So just a couple things. First, I wanted to clarify for Kathy. Carol alluded to that we spoke to some of your questions in C&I, and we did ask for some statistics, and I know that you might not have them available tonight, but we did ask for a takeaway to get the percentages of students at each of the 3 middle schools in the higher level maths, in the algebra 1 and geometry. I think that will help us all sort of see these 8th grade results for math a little more clearly. I think that will answer some of Eric's questions as well. And then also to your other point, we did talk about in C&I committee about, what are the next steps? What are the actionable steps that come next now that we have all of this fantastic data? So that's, that's my big question that was raised in C&I and that I'll raise again tonight. Like, this is all great. Now what do we do with it? And how do we close the gaps where they exist in this presentation?
Page 20 about geometry. three middle schools, then back has 50% at level 4 and also 50% at level 5. And compare with the other two schools, I mean, this 50%, that's exceedingly well. I mean, I don't know how many students taking the test, and this seems not so believable. It's like 50% or 50% on both top categories. Is any?
I have the counts. I mean, I can provide the counts to anyone. And no, I know what you said, because it's like, oh, 50-50, what are there, 2 kids? No, there are not 2 kids. And I did specifically, because it's just so even, 50 and 50. I did check, we do have the counts, and I would be able to provide you with the counts. Yes.
Just a question on the 11th grade testing. Looking at page 7 for the English language arts, our percentage change from level 1 and 2 compared to the state. I see both are going up, but ours has gone up much greater, and we can't be the only district where lots of kids are deciding not to take PARC because they don't, have to graduate. And the same for the level 4 and 5 changes. So I find that concerning. Ours has gone down. Yes, the state average has gone down, but ours is substantially higher. So I'd like a little more information on that, especially since it seemed from the other, I forget what page that chart is on, but participation by 11th grade went up for 2015 to 2016. It only went down slightly between 2016 and 2017.
It's
yet
still
we've
less
gone
than
down quite a bit.
It's still less than half of the students, though. So it certainly is up from that first year where like 16% of grade 11 students, took the test. Now we're at almost half. But what's key is the more than half that did not take it, and who is the almost half that did.
Right. But again, our percentage is quite different from the state, and we're clearly not going to be the only district where we're having a lot of students opting out of that. So I'm just a little concerned about those numbers. And I just want to clarify on page 19 where it shows on Algebra 1 for the high school, East and West, 0 students exceeded expectation. Is that correct in both high schools?
Yes.
Okay.
And what it is that a big majority of the students take Algebra 1 in Cherry Hill in the middle schools. And so these students that are taking Algebra 1 in grade 9 are probably your math grade 8 in the middle schools that were struggling. So it's not a representation of a grade level at the high school, that it is the students needing more support.
Yeah, I understand, but again, I think it's a little concerning that the level 4 is as low as they are, especially at West, none in level 5, because these kids still need to learn and succeed, and Algebra 1 is a pretty basic math, so hopefully this is being looked at, because they're clearly not becoming as successful as they need to be, these students.
Yes.
I would be cautious about dismissing the fact that we're doing so poorly at the high school level in particular, based on the idea that the students that are taking the test are the students that are struggling. Because when you compare that to the state data, which is probably comparable, all the other schools across the state, those students are also students that are struggling. So I think it's a pretty fair comparison between the different, between the state and us. It's the same type of students taking those tests and not doing very well. So I would be interested in finding other reasons why the scores are so low, because they're pretty dramatically low in many instances. The other thing that I would like to see is a comparison between our scores and the other district factor groups, the similar factor groups, to see how well we're doing against them rather than the state averages.
One thing with the district factor group, they don't publish the district factor group comparisons for Park. However, we are able to look up any district that we want to, and so we could select the districts that we would want to compare ourselves with and select those rather than what used to be the district factor group.
So I might need help with this question. So for 2021 requirement, you have to pass Algebra 1 to graduate is the only requirement other than the courses that are needed to your 120 courses or whatever. So if you take Algebra 1 in middle school and pass it as a 4 or a 5, you are good, you're golden for 2021. But if you don't pass it, what happens?
Okay. Let me just clarify one thing. And if for mathematics, it's Algebra 1. For English Language Arts, it's English Language Arts 10. Okay, that aside, we're talking math. For math, if they do not pass Algebra 1 assessment, the Park assessment, then the next alternative is a portfolio assessment. Now, having said that, there is a possibility that you cannot take the Algebra 1 Park assessment again unless you have additional instruction. So there is a possibility that districts could offer a refresher course and then they would be able to take the Park again. But if there's no additional instruction in Algebra 1, then what you have is you take that and you've passed the course, you take the Algebra 1 Park assessment, you failed the course, or you failed the test, you don't have any more additional instruction in Algebra 1, you need to do a portfolio, and we need to submit a portfolio to the state.
Okay, so second question. So let's say you go to Algebra 2 the next year. You didn't pass Algebra 1, but you take Algebra 2 the next year, and you take the Park, and you pass it. It doesn't count. That is so ridiculous. I am just dumbfounded by the rationale.
Dr. Mahan just pointed out that, and we did have some students, there is a summer Park, and they take an online test, but these are students that did not, they took an online class and then took the summer Park. But these are students that either did it for original credit that they were trying to get ahead, although not generally Algebra 1, or credit recovery. So you can take it over the summer, but again, a course must be involved, some additional instruction, whether it's a summer course or a district offers some sort of, not necessarily a full year, but a refresher course. The state is just mandating some additional instruction. You just can't keep sitting for the same test without changing.
And what does a math portfolio look like?
It's pages and pages of instructions and different types of, and we have had students, a number of students, and I should know because I've been working on the graduation pathways report, but I would say that we have had, have sent in between English Language Arts and mathematics probably about 25 to 30 portfolios.
More than I would have thought.
And it's done in 12th grade. So, and it's a comprehensive math portfolio. But we're hoping that we don't have to be doing a lot more of these.
Is this going to, it just doesn't, well, I'm not talking to the Department of Education here. I'm just talking to the district. But it just, I wouldn't want to be looking at these portfolios at the state for 600, or it was not 600 because it's not 600 districts have high school, but still.
No, and Cherry Hill, you have to remember, is a high-performing district.
Yes.
So imagine other districts that aren't as high-performing and the truck that they bring to the state with their portfolios.
Wow. And when does it due by? How much, like April or something?
It's a rolling. Last year it was rolling like from January to April or May.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
So for the Algebra 1, the 2017 results for the high schools, they're not affected by this requirement because they'll be graduates by 2020, is that correct? Okay, so, but assuming if the scores are not gonna, in a year, change dramatically, so there will be students who will be freshmen who will then be affected if they don't do well, and we're looking at, you know, a good
We do not want to do
40 or 50
portfolios.
some odd % of students who are not passing, right? Because you have to have a 3 or better. So
4 or better.
a 4 or better. So even bigger percentages of students who are not needing this. So I understand some students take a course in the summer, took an online course or something.
Right.
So is that, I mean, when you take an online course, you usually pay for it. So is that something the students themselves are now paying for? To take these classes and then to reassess on the park? Or?
So right now, what last summer was the first year of Summer Park. The students were taking the class, they pay for it, and we were notified that they were taking the class, and we told them that they needed to come and take the Summer Park because it is a state requirement if you're taking the course.
Okay, and if I understand correctly, it's not that you can just go sit for the test again, you have to take something. So is there something in the works to address this from the district instead of having these students go and register for, you know, EduSer or whatever it is and pay for these courses themselves?
So absolutely. And I apologize for not being at the first CNI meeting, so that's why I'm playing back up to Val this evening. But Val and Dr. Malash and Dr. Campisi shared all of the questions and concerns. We have already started to review and have reviewed all of the data with each of the building principals to talk about areas of strength and areas of growth that we need to address head on. We've already asked everyone for actionable steps from each of the building principals, so the concerns that you have raised are also concerns that we have from the Office of Curriculum and Instruction, particularly with algebra. So we are looking not only at the course that we currently offer, what are we going to do to redesign the course that we offer, and then if we need to provide new instruction, what that instruction will look like. So, long answer to a short yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So I just want to thank Val for taking the reins in my absence and Faith's absence. I think she did an excellent job, not only at CNI, but also tonight. So thank you very much, Mrs. Sadwin. And we have documented all of your questions. If you have any additional questions that you would like posed, please present them to Dr. Malash, and we will have those actionable steps and things that you have requested in a Friday memo forthcoming. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Very well done. And we have, go ahead, Dr. Mahan. Absolutely.
The question was just asked. And this presentation will be posted online.
Yes.
This evening. So, yeah, we already made arrangements to have it up after the
CNI
conclusion
tab?
of this meeting. Under the CNI tab.
Thank you, ladies. And then next, I'm excited to introduce Mr. Saporito, our District Director of Security. Every October, he delivers to us the annual Violence and Vandalism presentation. Board members, you also have a handout at your spot that has Mr. Saporito's presentation. As you know, you adopted resolution in October where we do the red ribbon and the violence and vandalism awareness in October. So Mr. Saporito is here to present.
Dr. Dickinson, Mr. Goodwin, Dr. Malash, board members, thank you very much for your time tonight. And as soon as I can find it, we will start. You may be glad or sad to know that this will be the last year of EVVRS reporting. The state, quite to our surprise, when first day of school, found out that they are moving to a different program called the SSDS, School Safety Data System. We have not had the training on that. It's going to be sometime in November. So I'm hoping that all the building principals and everybody involved in the security aspect will be, or that's filling out the forms, will be taking that, and that way we can move seamlessly into the new system that they have going up here. Here we go. Sorry about that. Everything's on here except the one that I need. There we go. Sorry about that. All right. As Dr. Malash stated, this will be, bless you, this will be the 16-17 school year data that I'll be presenting to you. We've seen remarkably steady numbers throughout the data. However, there are a couple of things that need a minor explanation, and that we'll go through as we go. There's 5 separate categories that are reported to the state: violence, vandalism, weapons, substance abuse, and HIB, or harassment, intimidation, and bullying. Each one of these have subcategories, and at times things don't fit in neatly, and at other times there are a couple of categories that can be labeled to one incident. So there's a couple of incidents in here, and we'll show you in the numbers that one incident falls under 2 different categories. So we have an unduplicated number in here that will reflect the actual number of the incidents, but it could be in 2 separate categories. We look at 5 years of data, back 5 school years. This year was the first year that the 5 years didn't include when HIB was not its own category. It was in the violence category. So now it is in its own category, and all 5 years will now be clean with the HIB numbers in there, not included in the violence category. As I said, the DOE is implementing a new system, the Student Safety Data System, and we'll be doing that this year. So let's look at the numbers. This is the numbers over the 5-year spread. This year, far right, you'll see 39 violence down from 51 the year before. 16 vandalisms down from 24. Weapons down 5 from 8. Now, and I'll break these down a little further, more detail as we go along into the subcategories. The substance abuse number, you see 54, and you see my mark there, an unduplicated total. When we get to that particular section, the substance abuse, we had a 19 forms submitted for 4 incidents. That's kind of made this number a little bigger. There was 4 incidents, but it involved altogether 19 kids. And when it comes to the substance abuse, they all have to be reported separately because they all get sent out for the testing. So unfortunately, we have 1 incident was 8 students with 1 incident. So those numbers are in there. I'll show you as we what the actual incidents or what the actual incidents are when we get to that particular category. Also, you will see that when we get to the details of the substance abuse, I think the number is 60, but what ends up happening is that there are some duplications where, let's just, for an example, somebody is taken, they think they're under they're under marijuana, or they're under the influence of marijuana, so it would be reported as a use, but now let's say they find a little bit on them, it's reported also in the possession category, so you get a little bit of duplication there. That's why the number will be a little higher when we get to the details. And that 185 is includes 2 incidents were reported under 2 separate categories, so it's really 183. But 2 of those incidents were reported. Like I said, they were both in the violence and vandalism category, so it's 185. That's just the way that the state counts them. But for it's really 183 separate incidents. Violence categories we looked at before, 39 incidents reported, 12 less than the previous year, of course last school year. Under the violence category, the number of assaults increased by 9, but and the threats decreased by 11. We'll see those numbers in a moment. The sex offenses, 1 less than last year. They involved 1 inappropriate touching incident, 2 sending of inappropriate pictures, and an exposure. I can't tell you how grateful I am to the Cherry Hill Police Department, maybe a little jaded or slanted, but especially the community relations department, Renee Houlihan, and the people that put that together, because they went to not only to the students in the middle school, and we seen that wasn't quite working, so we had a parents' night at Carusi, I believe it was last year, and we had the parents there to show them how bad this picture thing is getting, because the prosecutor's office really wants to charge that it's child pornography, and we don't want to see that at all. So the numbers are expressing really over the past couple of years, because that's when the community policing has got involved in it, and they've done a fantastic job of getting the word out and doing the instruction on that. So here are the numbers under the violence category, under the subcategories. So the assaults are up a little bit. Fighting is down a little bit, which is a good number. The sex offenses went over, and the threats for a total of 39, down from 12 from last year. Anybody has any questions, just shout them out. That's what you get.
Yeah,
Dr. Wong? Sure.
What's the fine line between assault and fighting?
It's a very good question. An assault is somebody gets no provocation and assaults somebody and injures them, whereas fighting is more of a mutual. Two people square off because they're going to fight over something. So that's the difference between the fighting and the assault. It's more of a dual, a mutual engaged fight, other than somebody being assaulted without the other party being a willing participant in the fight.
How about the other party later, the defendant herself or himself?
That's still considered an assault, because it was it was initiated. It didn't start out as a mutually engaged fight, so it would go down as an assault, and then somebody protecting themselves would be just part of the natural, what would happen after the assault occurred. Vandalism category, 16 incidents reported this year in comparison to 24 last year, so a little bit lower. 11 property damage compared to 6 last year, a little bit up. 2 incidents of theft, down from last year. Glad to report 0 bomb threats this year and 0 bomb threats last year, so let's hope it's the same this year. As we know, they cause a major disruption in the school day, and it's something that we really want to see zeros on all the time. The numbers here, as you can see, that we went over the ones in the last slide, and it's just to show the comparison between the years. Weapons category, decrease in the number of incidents. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Judge.
That's okay. Trespassing. Can
Yes,
you trespassing after hours, or
It could be that, but these 2 particular incidents were letters that were given to a high school student to stay off of property, and they unfortunately went back twice. So the first time was a warning, second time they were charged with trespassing. But they're both reported as trespassing. That's what it is. Weapons category, 5 incidents reported this year in comparison to last year, and I'm happy to report that none of those weapons were involved in any offenses other than just possession. The state requires, even if, and I use this because it happened, a backpack was used during the summer and a kitchen knife was left in there when they went on a picnic, and they brought it to school and it came out, and unfortunately it has to be reported. The types of weapons, and I'll get into that in a second, but the police are notified on all of them. They don't necessarily take a report on them, but they are notified of all of them. And like I said, the DOE requires that if there is a weapon on campus, it has to be reported. And now, if we look at the weapons themselves, and we look over the 5-year snapshot here, which is very important. This year, it was 4 folding knives and 1. It was a partial blade from a kitchen knife that ended up in somebody's backpack somehow. And that's it. None of them were used. In fact, over the past 5 years, there's only 1 incident where a weapon, which isn't much of a weapon, but can be, was a pen that was involved in assault of an administrator at one of the schools a few years back. Mr. Goldman.
I just wanted, so is that a typo? Should that be 16, 17, or is that 17, 18?
No, that's my fault. That's 16, 17.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Getting ahead of myself. Now we get to the substance abuse category. 54 incidences compared to 33 last year. A little bit of a rise. Again, a lot of. Pardon me, my pump's going. There we go. A lot of them involve multiple multiple students in one incident. Like I said, 4 incidents accounted for 20. The alcohol use, 1 incident involved the use of alcohol. Marijuana use, 16 incidents reported involved students found to be under the influence compared to 17 last year, and 1 student being in possession of marijuana compared to 2 last year. Distribution, there was no incidents of distribution. Now, if we look at the numbers, which are a little more telling, alcohol 11, marijuana 37. The other there for use 2, they were methamphetamines, both of them. And if you go down to possession, the numbers there, the 2 were over-the-counter medications that were not authorized to be with the child. And you see that number 60, a little bit different from the one up in the front page, which is the one reported to the state as 54. These I just broke out when one of them were in both categories. That's my insulin pump, I apologize. Some of them, as I gave the example of possession of marijuana and under the influence of marijuana. It's 1 incident, but it was put under 2 different categories, the subcategories, so I included them in here in that number. So that's why it's 60 instead of 54. There were 6 incidents where there was both possession and use. The HIBs we've seen from the 5, and I cut that last year off because of the previous year, because that's where it was in the violence category. We've seen a steady rise, which was accounted, or which was more education on the building level, more awareness of what harassment, intimidation, bullying was as it went over through the years. And as you see, it went up, and then as of this year, it started to go down a little bit. We had 16 less incidents reported or founded this year. Interesting, however, next year, the SSDS is not only going to track founded HIBs, they're also going to track alleged. So you get a number for both of them next year. So once something happens to the school, what's being done with it? We had 40 incidents that were documented on a police report, meaning the police responded to one of the buildings and took a police report, but no further action was taken. Now, there may have been a little bit of investigation by detectives in the police department, but there was no complaint signed by any party, either the school itself, an administrator, or a parent of one of the children. There were 26 incidents where a police report was taken and criminal complaints were signed. So, or juvenile petitions in this case. So the police respond, they take the report, and either the administrator or the building principal thought it was egregious enough to sign a criminal complaint, or one of the families decided that they want to sign a criminal complaint. And 19 in-school suspensions and 110 students suspended out of school. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the adjudication of these cases that go to family court very, very rarely actually go to family court and tried by the judge there. Most of the time it's some sort of action group or a board at the local level that takes care of these cases and adjudicates them that way. Very rarely do they go to the actual family court in Camden and go through that process. So we have our safe school practices. What have we been doing? What do we do on a daily basis? Of course, character education that's in every building to build and to build in education for responsible young adults. As I said before, the CHPD social media presentation has been fantastic. It's been very, very, very worthwhile. We review our crisis management plan, which is a document that never seems to be caught up on. It's constantly changing, and we get that out to the buildings also. School resource officer and the school safety assistant program is doing a fantastic job at the high school level. Classroom presentations by the police department. Actually, they have the big presentation that they do school-wide, but then they have sub-presentations that they can do in different classrooms at the classroom level to make it a little more intimate and to try to drive the point home a little bit better. We have, of course, every visitor gets greeted at every door. No door gets open until we know who's coming in. Staff photos and IDs issued to everyone so that we know who's in the building and who should be in the building as they're marked. at-risk students are taken care of by our student assistant counselors. The MOA, which is a little late this year coming to signing, but the memorandum of agreement is a document that makes sure that the police department, the school district, and the prosecutor's office are on the same page when it comes to reporting and following up on these cases. This would be interesting. Access control system in the schools right now is the office and the buzzers. However, the thing that I'm really excited about, and that the staff and the administrators here that we've been working on, Mr. Bart, Mr. Connor, Mr. Carter, and Ms. Sugars have been working endlessly on trying to get our schools a little bit more secure. And we have a great program, which is the last bullet here, the pilot program to enhance school safety, installing security vestibules, surveillance cameras, and swipe card entries to eliminate keys. Swipe card entry is much more manageable to be able to know who can get into the building and at what times. So we'll be working on that. And that's a long-range goal of ours, and the other points that we have been practicing over the past years with myself and Director Nuzzo before me. And of course, in any great organization, we have stakeholders, and we have plenty here. The board for continuing support and the great support that we give to the district. Parents and students, which is what we're all made up of. Of course, our teachers and staff who are fantastic. The administrators, our PTA, campus police, security, our local emergency responders. It has to be a team effort, especially when we're talking about the amount of kids daily in our possession and the immense responsibility that we have to keep them safe. So that is the 16-17 report. If there's any questions, I'll be more than glad to answer. Mr. Gobin.
I guess I constantly hearing all the things in the news regarding this whole thing around opioids and all that. I mean, are there proactive things that's happening in the schools to? I mean, because you hear, statewide it's supposed to be this epidemic. So what's going on in the schools to make sure we're taking care of the kids? That's one of the educational pieces that the police department does, is the opioids. Of course, it's targeted to the older kids. It's education and hoping that it's a very hard subject to get through to the kids sometimes. You see, I can't tell you how many times that you've seen an unfortunate accident where somebody overdoses and they die, and the first thing you hear is, never ever would I have dreamed that would happen to that kid. It crosses economic boundaries, it crosses racial boundaries, it crosses everything. It takes everybody equally. It's terrible, and hopefully that the education piece that the police department is putting into it is doing good. Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Saporito. Well done. Mr. Saporito's presentation also will be posted online on the district website, so it'll be accessible by the community.
All right, thank you for all those wonderful reports. Very interesting stuff. Next up, we have our board representative reports. So I guess we'll start with West, and we have Gay this evening with us.
Okay. Before I start, would anybody be interested in a copy of my report? Okay.
As long as we don't have to grade them.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Good evening, Dr. Malash, Dr. Dickinson, Mr. Goodwin, members of the Board of Education, and stakeholders. The fall is a hectic time in regards to the college application process. SATs, teachers' letters of recommendation, the Common App, Naviance, scholarships, FAFSA, and the college admissions can all seem intimidating. Recently, West held a senior parent meeting on September 28th. Guidance counselors shared valuable information regarding the college application process. Those in attendance found the information to be very useful and settling. With the support of my family and my school, the college admissions process is becoming more manageable. A fundraiser was held on October 8th at the pre-opening of the Habit Burger Grill. 100% of the proceeds went to the PTA, and it was a huge success. Proceeds from the fundraiser will be used to fund a PTA donation to West. I highly recommend Habit Burger Grill for their delicious food and superb customer service. We hosted the SAT on October 7th. I was glad to see students taking steps toward their higher education goals. Sophomores and juniors completed the PSAT on October 11th. Freshmen and seniors participated in various athletic events, which proved to be fun for all. The Cherry Hill Police Department also presented 2 quality presentations. Freshmen learned about responsible uses of social media and the implications of violating the laws. Seniors learned about appropriate ways to interact with law enforcement in situations involving motor vehicles. It was a good day for all students in attendance. On October 19th at 7 p.m., West will be hosting the choral and instrumental fall preview concert. This promises to be a highly engaging experience for all attendees. A financial aid meeting was held for parents to help with navigating through FAFSA, applying for student aid and loans, as well as scholarships. The meeting was held on October 12th, and it was a very informative meeting. There was an activities fair held in the Walsh Gym on Friday, October 13th. Students had the opportunity to explore the plethora of clubs, activities, and athletic teams West has to offer. It was a high-energy event. We hope to see even more students involved in an activity of choice in the future. The National Hispanic Heritage Month just concluded last week. The Hispanic Heritage Club at High School West capped the month with an outstanding fundraising event on October 13th. The event was held in the West Auditorium, and it featured many performances to benefit Puerto Rico and its citizens struggling to recover from the devastating effects of Hurricane Irma. Students from Joyce Kilmer Elementary School participated as well, making it a true community effort. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow will be performed on October 27th at 7 p.m., October 28th at 2 p.m. and 7 p.m., October 29th at 2 p.m., and there will be a special matinee performance for Cherry Hill Middle Schools. I had to make a correction. It's just Cherry Hill Middle Schools on October 30th at 10:30 a.m. We invite you all to come out to support the show. The fall sports season at High School West has been a fun one. The teams are competing with pride and enthusiasm, and they are exhibiting the West way in their sportsmanship. This concludes my October report. Thank you.
Thank you, Gay. Next, we have Josh from East.
Hello, esteemed members of the Board of Education. It's a pleasure to see everyone again, and I hope that my report on the most recent events at Cherry Hill East can be of service. With the end of the first interim last Friday, it seems that a school year's length of events has already passed. I have a bit to get through, and it's already been a while, so I'll spare you any more prefacing at this point. The school's Language Honor Societies inducted their second group of new inductees on October 4th. Already, the fairly new organizations have done a good job of educating the community about their associated cultures and tutoring those with less experience than themselves. Additionally, a number of organizations came together to aid Puerto Rico after the recent devastation there. The Spanish Honor Society collected valuable supplies like bottled water and canned food to send over, and the Interact Club over at East has been tirelessly selling candy bars to raise money for the cause. School-wide student government held their second ever outdoor movie night on the 7th on the backfield. They once again brought out a giant inflatable screen and several food trucks. The film, as decided by popular vote, was Grease. I personally look forward to the continuation of this new tradition. It's a fun night. The long-standing issue regarding how senior parking would work was finally resolved. Initially, a large number of students had taken issue with how spots were being divided up between seniors and juniors, as well as between athletes and non-athletes. However, after a survey and discussion between senior class officers and Dr. Perry, it was declared that parking spots this year would be given out mall parking style, which basically means students who come earlier can pick whatever spots, and whatever's left over is for those who come later. And it still requires a parking permit. On Wednesday, the 11th, sophomores and juniors took the PSAT. For sophomores, the test only gives a rough estimate of how they would do on an actual SAT, but for juniors, the test acts as a preliminary assessment for the National Merit Scholarship Program, which awards scholarships for college. East has boasted a large number of both finalists and commended students in the past, and we know that our peers did their best. For freshmen and seniors, this day was used for assemblies with guest speakers on the topics of traffic stops, internet usage, and vocational careers. During the last Thursday and Friday, the 12th and 13th, East hosted its annual club fair and the D-Bark Gym as wet conditions forced it to move from the main courtyard. Representatives from our numerous academic, ethnic, and volunteering clubs came out to recruit new members and show the East community what they do. Turnout was high due to promotion through announcements and social media, as well as possibly due to the snacks provided by some of the clubs. East Drama had its first performance of the year on the 13th and 14th. The Lab Theater production of The Remarkable Incident at Carson Corners started the production season strong and has garnered even more excitement for the next show, It's a Wonderful Life. Students in advanced theater classes also attended the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair and received first place for their performance of an original medley of Shakespeare plays. East fall sports are also beginning to wrap up. Both girls soccer and field hockey have qualified for playoffs, which will be commencing soon. Girls volleyball, ranked within the top 20 in the state, is also on track to make playoffs despite having a very difficult schedule during their season. Girls tennis, ranked 12th in the state, made it to semifinals for South Jersey, and it's still in the running for their conference title. Boys cross country has had a strong season thus far, taking first at the Ray Hoagland Invitational and ranking highly at the South Jersey Open. Girls cross country took first at a meet as well, and one of their runners has been featured in articles on her outstanding performance. We are currently looking forward to a number of events at Cherry Hill East Blood Drive will take place on November 1st. The organizers have been making sure that the entire school is aware of the importance of donation, as well as the benefits provided by the event, which generally have also included food in the past. Having raised large amounts of blood for use in the area, they expect to have another successful year. The annual Spirit Week preparations also began with the selection of a theme and individual topics for the classes. This year, TV networks will dominate the week with the senior class representing the Disney Channel. You'll hear, Discovery. Don't misquote me on that. You'll hear a lot about the events and outcome later on. I'd also like to mention on the 20th, Dr. Malash will be visiting East to engage in a discussion with several students about pressing issues. I've spent a good amount of time preparing the list of students and the topics to be discussed so far. I look forward to making sure that East has a chance to ask you questions about what they want answered and to give you a better idea about what we are as a school currently. If you have any questions, please ask them now. I hope that I can help you make better decisions for the district as a whole. So if you have any concerns, please address them.
So Josh, how is mall parking working?
Well, I don't drive.
Oh, so it's perfect.
Well, okay, so at least from what I've seen, when there was the previous system where they had started giving out parking spots from the back, there were a lot more cars in the back. But now people seem to be closer, and I haven't heard any incidents where people have gotten to fights or hit
That's a
each other.
positive. That's a good thing. Yeah. We don't need to increase our numbers on our report next year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's going better than.
It was better than when we didn't know what was going on.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you both. Very, very busy time. Breathtaking. All right. So we'll move into our first public discussion. At this time, your comments must be regarding items on this evening's action agenda. When you come to the mic, please state your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes for your remarks. Please note the green light will turn yellow when you have 30 seconds remaining. The light will turn red when your 3 minutes are up. Any comments on the agenda for this evening? No? Okay. Well, we'll move on and move to the superintendent's comments.
Thank you, Dr. Dickinson, and I will be brief this evening. First, I'm grateful to the kids, to Gay and to Joshua, for doing their presentations. I think they do a tremendous job reporting out what's going on at the high schools and giving the students perspective. It's one of the really valuable things that we get to hear each month at our meetings. They talked about it has been incredibly busy. It's been busy throughout the district, as we quickly come to the end of October. A couple of things that I do want to highlight. We are in the midst of the additional community conversations that we're having as we're talking about the Cherry Hill 2020, about the plan, about the bond referendum that we intend to go out for on September 25th of 2018. Last Saturday, I had the opportunity to welcome some folks to Bret Harte. Dr. Birdie was there with me and Mrs. Wilson, and we had a number of folks that came out. We had a great conversation. I was at the Sharp PTA meeting last night. Had a great time speaking with the folks from the Sharp community. Tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, we'll be in the Little Theater at High School East for one of our scheduled conversations. And then this Friday, I'm excited that I have a new special guest for my online lunch with the superintendent. Mr. Saporito is going to be joining me on Friday, and we're going to be giving a bit of a recap of the violence and vandalism report that he presented to you all this evening, and just talking about some practical things that we do and where we are. We are very close to doing our grand opening and reveal of the Barkley Early Childhood Center and the additional security enhancements with the security vestibule and the camera system, and the locks and all that kind of thing. Hopefully I'll have an announcement for you about when that's going to be. We'll do a big piece where we'll talk about it, and focus on what we've done. Again, the culmination of the last 4 or 5 years worth of work, and a tremendous amount of work that's gone on, during the course of the last year in order to prepare this project and to get this project done. The high school, I just want to mention also the High School East project, the water infiltration project that's been going on, is rapidly coming to a close. The majority of it, again, there'll be smaller pieces that will continue to be worked on throughout the course of the fall. Grateful to Mrs. Sugars, Mr. Carter, Mr. Bart, and the work that they've done, especially with the focus of attention on the work getting done in a timely manner. It is still an active construction site, in some of the areas. The students and the staff have been very tolerable of the work as it has continued. Once that is completed, again, we'll do update and pictures and go over and see that all. Just a reminder for everybody, we are going to hold our committee meetings, our November committee meetings, will be held at the Barkley Early Childhood Center. All right, so both of the meetings for November, both of those evenings, remember the committee meetings will be on Monday evening and Wednesday evening. We will not meet on Tuesday because it's election day. Right, so Monday evenings we'll have our regular P&L meeting and our C&I meeting. They'll be held at the Barkley Early Childhood Center. And then on Wednesday, we'll hold the HR meeting, we'll hold the B&F meeting, we'll hold strategic planning. All 5 of those meetings will take place at the Barkley Early Childhood Center. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Malash. All right, so we'll move into the work session portion of our agenda this evening, and we'll start off with
It's just action. There's only one. Just the regular. It's just the one.
no work session. Okay,
Just in the action agenda, they'll do the.
gotcha. Okay, skip that. We'll move into our action agenda. Mrs. Seidel, would you move the C&I agenda, please?
Sure, but just as a point of clarification, I'm doing my committee report first, correct? Okay, thank you, Dr. Dickinson. Just wanted to make sure I had this correct. So I'm going to report out on our most recent Curriculum and Instruction Committee meeting, which was held on October 2nd at 7 p.m. And I say this every month, but as usual, we had a lot to cover. It's a very busy committee, so I will be as brief as I can, but still be informative. So please stop me if you have questions. Our first update was from Mrs. Wethington on an organizational skills training program partnership with CHOP that you've heard about before. The update at this point was to the focus of the study is on upper elementary students, and the study, the 5 schools participating in the study have been chosen. Correct me if I have this wrong. Cooper, Hart, Kingston, Payne, and Woodcrest have been selected for the study. The principals have been engaged in the process, and now the researchers are just waiting for IRB approval. So more to come on that through C&I over the next couple of months. We had a few theatrical production approvals. Rosa International Middle School will be doing Annie in April of 2018, and there were no questions or concerns about moving forward with the production. And then very exciting news, Cherry Hill High School West in March of 2018 will be performing Phantom of the Opera. This has never been available before for amateurs. The rights have now been released, and so West is able to put on this production. So the folks that were here to talk about that were very, very excited. And I know I personally am excited to go see it in March. You have a blue packet in front of you, a light blue packet in front of you that goes into a little more detail about the Rowan College at Burlington County, also known as RCBC, proposal that Mrs. Staffen and Mr. Covington presented to us. Bear with me, I'm going to read this verbatim because it was a really exciting program and I don't want to miss anything. So Mrs. Staffen presented a proposal for a partnership for dual credit as well as workforce training opportunities that may lead to college credits with RCBC for our students. RCBC has already agreed to accept all AP courses for college credit, which is really exciting. Students participating in this program can graduate with the equivalent of an associate's degree. The plan is to begin the foundation of this partnership in the 2018 and 2019 school year with full implementation after the following year. There's potential to expand the program, for example, expanding it into a STEM program. RCBC would transcript these courses from our school toward their undergraduate degree, and all these courses are offered at a very reduced rate. So again, I encourage you to look in the packet for more details or ask questions after, but it's really, really exciting opportunity for our students. Again, I believe this will be coming to us for approval in the future to solidify the partnership with RCBC. So again, more details coming. As in all the committee meetings this past month, we talked about CUSAC, and Mrs. Wethington reviewed each of the indicators for our instruction and programming area on our statement of assurance for this year, and then Dr. Campisi gave a brief presentation. It was brief but very informative and helpful regarding the CUSAC process, and we discussed the possibility of equivalency waivers. We also had our world language update. Mr. Goldthorpe presented the results of the world language survey and explained the data analyzed from the survey. Have you all seen the presentation? Is it, Mrs. Wilson, is it up on the website? I know we talked that it was going to go up on the website, but. Okay. I'll pass this around so you can take a look at it, and I'll make sure you all get a copy. But the presentation basically reviewed sort of the process of how the, sorry, looking for my documents.
It is there. It is there.
It is great. Okay, thank you. Reviewed the survey questions again, the process for the survey, and then summarized the data that was collected in the survey, presented it in a variety of formats from the student's perspective, the community's perspective, summarized the categories of the responses, because again, they were free-form responses and not canned responses. So you can take a look at that. I lost my place. So the goal is for administration to make a recommendation for an additional language. We're looking for that recommendation to come to us in November, and the 3 languages that are being considered for the 2018-2019 school year are Japanese, Russian, or Chinese. So again, we'll have additional information forthcoming in November at CNI, and then presentation to the full board. Okay, great, thank you. Next up, we talked about the PSAT's agenda for seniors and freshmen and teachers, and we talked about what was happening at each of the 2 schools, and I know that Gay and Josh talked a little bit about their experiences. So we got to see the agendas and for the students, as well as the teachers' professional development for that afternoon due to the early dismissal. And let's see, okay, so Ms. Stadwin presented the park results. We've already covered that, so I don't need to share that with you again. I just, again, want to reiterate that a couple of the next steps, the actionable steps, was the big takeaway from CNI. Okay, what are we going to do with this data? And we've already talked about how we're going to see that coming. We did have some new business. Dr. Campisi talked to us about anchor field trips at the elementary level. I know this item was in our Friday packet with some additional detail, but Dr. Campisi explained the work being done with the elementary principals regarding the development of anchor field trips for equity and consistency across the elementary level. And in your Friday packets, I believe that has been solidified for each of the elementary grade levels. We did have a fair amount of public comment. Most of the public comment was in response to the world language update. We had several folks who were definitely excited about what was presented and about the possibility of a new language being introduced. We had a couple people who had asked what, if any, changes would be happening at the middle school level with world language. We didn't get into any more detail on that, but again, most of the public comment was related to world language and the results of the survey and excitement of possibility of a new language being introduced. And that was all. That's my report. Any questions or comments regarding that? Ms. Scarpolino.
Yeah, sorry, I had a quick question just because I was looking at the presentation while you were talking. So Japanese, Russian, or Chinese are potential to be added. That's what we're going to look at?
Dr. Malachi.
Yes, so the intention is to do a pilot in 2018, 2019 to hire a full-time staff member, assign them half-time at High School East and half-time at High School West to go through. So as they looked at those three languages, Mr. Goldthorpe and Dr. Mahan and the folks in the curriculum office are looking at the feasibility, challenges, strengths, weaknesses with each of those three languages. So again, it was a culmination of the survey and the work that they've done going back into last year, looking at the comprehensive program.
So it'll be a pilot for one of the languages. They'll determine
a pilot for one of the languages for next year, correct?
And we're not eliminating any languages.
There's no plan to eliminate any of the current languages that are being offered.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Sure, Dr. Wong.
Yeah. I also have questions about these three language choices. How did you come to these choices? Because when I look at the surveys that from the communities, it's clearly that Chinese is ranked very high, and from the students, Chinese is also high, and with regard to Russia, with Russian, then Hebrew is higher than Russian. So, I mean, you look at different factors. It's mainly because you think that it's easy to hire a staff member, or it's because of the student interest, or I mean, how do you actually come to make those choices?
Sure. So again, the survey was one piece of the information. It was the comprehensive look at in terms of what they did and the languages. And there's a link that's in the presentation that's also online as we looked at other school districts throughout the state, districts we typically compare ourselves to, and languages that are offered. And we believe that those are the three languages that we believe that we could hire a staff member, that there was the general interest, and as we looked at comparative districts that offered similar languages. So right now, as they look at that big picture about, do we think we can hire somebody? Do we think we can retain somebody after we hire them to go through, and then looking at longevity of the program.
Follow-up question, because I'm, in the Asian Studies program at Rowan, and we are looking for people who can teach Japanese and Chinese, and we have facing some difficulties of finding some qualified people. So I anticipate that could be a problem, for us to hire a qualified person to teach, because we may have to have even higher standard. And then in that case, then my thinking, my suggestion might be that we don't just choose one language, because if we are going to do like three in response to the student's interest, then if one position failed through in finding a qualified person, then we can find another language. So I mean, the survey shows clearly that the community wants our language to be updated, the world language curriculum to be updated. So if we only limit to one language, and if the position is not filled, then that means we have to wait for another year and so on. So that will not be a very good, I would say, decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wong. Any other questions? Sure, Mrs. Matlack.
Not a question, but just you mentioned that some of the community members asked about the middle school world language program, and so I just wanted to share that we also, the committee also asked about that, and administration shared with us that they would be continuing the study of the world language program at the elementary and the middle school level over the next several months, and that we would be getting a report back from them on those levels regarding world language.
Thank you, Mrs. Matlack. Any other comments or questions? Okay, if not, then I will move into the curriculum and instruction action agenda. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following. Number 1, resolution approving rider to services agreement for the 2017-2018 school year. Number 2, approval of attendance at conferences and workshops for the 2017-2018 school year. Number 3, approval of out-of-district placements for the 2017-2018 school year. Number 4, resolution approving use of hosting services license. And you have a yellow sheet in front of you for an addition of item number 5, approval of special education settlement agreement. Do I have a second? Mrs. Judge, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Mrs. Ridgway.
Mr. Goodwin.
Yes.
Mrs. Judge.
I need to abstain on number 1 regarding the Cooper Health System. Yes to the rest.
Mrs. Matlack.
Yes.
Mrs. Seidel.
Yes to all.
Mrs. Scarpolino.
Yes.
Mrs. Schultz.
Yes.
Dr. Wong.
Yes.
Dr. Dickinson.
Yes to all. All right, Mr. Goodwin, would you discuss the BNF committee meeting and move the agenda?
Yes, I will, Dr. Dickinson. So for the BNF committee meeting, we started off our discussion with CUSAC, and for CUSAC, though we may have a waiver in terms of some of the in-house inspection on certain things, we will need to have, there will be actual inspections from the state for West, Rosa, Johnson, Alton High School, Barclay, and I can't read my writing there. One other school, pardon. But there will be inspections there. Also, there's a checklist that will need to be completed for all of this schools and buildings in the district. We also talked about the fact that there's going to be a new payroll, accounting, and personnel system. The system we're currently looking at is the CSI, and that's something that's going to be looked at. I don't know the exact date in terms of rolling that out. Is that later in the year? Okay. So that, and we also went through and discussed the work. Dr. Malash talked a little bit more earlier about the work going on at East. We discussed that, and also the new camera system and security system at Barclay. We discussed that as well. The work at Kingston was completed. The work at Barton, we believe it looks like we're going to have someone that's going to bid on the work, or we have someone for the work. At least that's supposed to be coming up soon, so hopefully we'll have that in place for that work to start. And there was a question around the status of the lead remediation. That work is taking place. There was bottle refilling stations that have been placed in a number of the buildings already. And I believe that was the major things we discussed. Are there any questions? If not, then I'll step through the agenda or the action items here. The superintendent recommend, and I move the following. 1, financial reports. 2, resolution of award of bids. 3, resolution of award of transportation. And 4, acceptance of donations. Do I have a second? Mrs. Scarpolino. And are there any questions? If not, Mrs. Ridgway.
Mr. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mrs. Judge,
Yes to all.
Mrs. Matlack,
Yes.
Mrs. Seidel,
I have to abstain with respect to CDW on the bill list. Yes to the rest.
Mrs. Scarpolino,
Yes to all.
Mrs. Schultz,
Yes to all.
Dr. Wong,
Yes.
Dr. Dickinson,
Yes to all. Mrs. Judge, would you discuss the HR committee, please?
Yes, I will, Dr. Dickinson. Thank you. Our meeting was held on Tuesday, October 3rd. And as you guys know, we can't discuss a whole lot what goes on in HR as it's a confidential meeting, but we did discuss CUSAC like every other committee did. And it stands for Quality Single Accountability Continuum. I had to write it down because I can never remember it. And we received a quick update on negotiations. And during our meeting and just chatting or whatever, HR retention of files came up. So you may or may not know that the Department of Education in the state of New Jersey requires school districts to retain HR files for 80 years. So the file is organized by different sections in a personnel file. 5 sections are interview, evaluations, certifications, salary and salary changes, and miscellaneous. And in a separate folder in a filing cabinet that's separate are employee medical files. And the only people to legally view these files are the superintendent, the nurse of the school, of the building where they work, and the employee, which just was very interesting. So we had quite the conversation about that. Our next meeting will be at Barclay on Wednesday, November 8th at 5 o'clock. On, what did I say? Yes, November 8th, because November 7th is Election Day. Any questions? Seeing none, back to you, Dr. Dickinson. Oh, I gotta move the agenda. Oh my God, and I remembered that. So the superintendent recommends, and I move the following. Number 1, termination of employment certificated. Number 2, termination of employment non-certificated. Number 3, appointment certificated. Number 4, appointments non-certificated. Number 5, contract renewal certificated. Number 6, leaves of absence certificated. Number 7, leaves of absence non-certificated. Number 8, assignment salary change certificated. Number 9, assignment salary change non-certificated. Number 10, other compensation certificated. Number 11, other motions. And number 12, other motions. And I don't have a handout, so that's it. Do I have a second? Mrs. Seidel. Now any questions? Seeing none, Mrs. Ridgway.
Mr. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mrs. Judge,
Yes to all.
Mrs. Matlack,
Yes.
Mrs. Seidel,
Yes.
Mrs. Scarpolino,
Yes to all.
Mrs. Schultz,
Yes.
Dr. Wong,
Abstaining to item 3, appointments certificated, E and H. Yes to the rest.
Dr. Dickinson,
Yes to all. Mrs. Scarpolino, would you discuss the P&L committee meeting and move the agenda, please?
Certainly. The Policy and Legislation Committee met this month. We actually had a pretty quick meeting, a short agenda. We also discussed CUSAC as it pertains to, it relates to the governance component, because that's what our committee does. After sort of reviewing, well, actually, Dr. Campisi gave us a pretty comprehensive overview of CUSAC and how metrics are scored. We reviewed it as to pertain to governance, and we were meeting the standard. We were high performing in governance, and I had a score of 100%, so that was great. Next, we discussed the second reading and adoption of the draft policy 5756 for transgender students. We just reviewed it. There were no additional changes. Previously, we had talked about the changes that were made regarding language regarding locker rooms and bathrooms, and referring to students as the gender they identify with, regardless of legal change status of the name of legal name change. So since there were no additional changes, that was moved forward and is actually on the agenda tonight to be adopted. And we had no new first readings for any policies this month, and there was no public comment. Are there any questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move into the agenda. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following. Number 1, second reading of policy. Number 2, waiver of regulation 2340 field trips. Number 3, New Jersey CUSAC statement of assurance. Number 4, approval of harassment, intimidation, bullying investigation decisions, excluding incident number 3433, as it is being removed from the agenda this evening. And then we have an additional green sheet, which item number 5, approval of HIB hearing decision. Do I have a second? Mrs. Judge, are there any questions? Being none, Mrs. Ridgway.
Mr. Goodwin.
Yes.
Mrs. Judge.
Yes to all.
Mrs. Matlack.
Yes.
Mrs. Seidel.
Yes.
Mrs. Scarpolino.
Yes.
Mrs. Schultz.
Yes.
Dr. Wang.
Yes.
Dr. Dickinson.
Yes to all. Mrs. Matlack, would you discuss the strategic planning meeting? And don't have any agenda to move, but you have the floor.
But I am certainly excited to have something to report on at the action meeting. The Strategic Planning Committee met on Tuesday, October 3rd at 7 p.m. And like the other committees, we discussed CUSAC. And Mrs. Sugars talked about that in relation to the district's facilities department. That's a 7-page document for each of our 19 buildings. And Mr. Carter will be meeting with the head custodians and principals to do this. The Camden County Business Administrator is scheduled to conduct the pre-CUSAC facilities visits, as Mr. Goodwin said, at West, Rosa, Hart, Johnson, and the Alternative High School, and Barkley Early Childhood Center. And those visits will start in November. We talked about the status of our district's long-range facilities plan update, and Mr. Middleton told us that the information has been compiled for the elementary schools, and he's currently putting the finishing touches on the middle and high school information. And district personnel will be trained on inputting the information into the state's program that occurred on October 11th, 2017. The plan will likely need to be updated again as we finalize the projects for that part of the referendum. We also talked about the Barkley Security Project, and as Dr. Malash mentioned and some other committee chairs mentioned, we'll be having our committee meetings at Barkley in November so that the board can get an update on the security renovations that have been done there. We talked about the referendum project summary. Mr. Middleton briefed us on the development of the elementary school projects being reviewed for inclusion in the referendum. For each school, security will be a priority with the installation of security vestibules, cameras, and swipe access systems. This may necessitate the reconfiguration of administrative spaces in those schools. The ages of school roofs are being reviewed, keeping in mind that it will take some time after the referendum to design specifications, bid, and then schedule the work to be done. So a roof that will be out of warranty in the next several years may be included on that list because of the time it will take for the work to be done. paving, sidewalk, and curbing work that may be done at each school could include work on utility piping and infrastructure underneath the parking lots and under paved areas as well. The committee discussed the structuring of the referendum question or questions, and we could possibly have more than one question on the ballot. However, the first question must pass in order for the second, if there is a second question, in order for that to pass. The committee also briefly began the discussion about other revenue sources for projects such as naming rights and community support for such things as athletic fields and auditoriums. That is all I have for the committee, and I have no agenda items to move, but I would, before I ask for any questions or comments on that, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Malash, who would like to talk to us about our discussion about full-day kindergarten.
Thank you, Ms. Matlack. So we've talked quite a bit over the course of the last 7, 8, 9 months or so about full-day kindergarten, including Dr. Mahan did a great presentation in July. We had updated information in September, and the board has indicated as a body that they wanted us as administration to pursue looking at full-day kindergarten to be done within our schools, within our neighborhood schools. We had talked about lots of different options with where we are. Obviously, we're very supportive, of the full-day kindergarten and the concept and the notion of doing it within the neighborhood schools. As we spent the 16-17 academic year, doing the Cherry Hill 2020 discussions and meeting with community and the online surveys and all of that kind of thing, we know that full-day kindergarten came up more than any of the other items. At this point, though, we're going to separate the discussion of full-day kindergarten from the discussion about the referendum. As a district, we're going to pursue the implementation of full-day kindergarten within our neighborhood schools, but it's not going to be part of any vote that goes out for referendum about work that may need to be done and all of that kind of thing. We believe that there's the commitment from the board and the commitment and the support from the community about the value of the full-day kindergarten. So we're going to be continuing that work. It's going to be going along parallel paths. So regardless of what takes place on September 25th, 2018, and I'm optimistic that we will pass this referendum when we hit that date because of the work that needs to be done, we'll be pursuing that parallel path with full-day kindergarten. Regardless of what it is, we will not be implementing full-day kindergarten in September of 2018, right? It just will not be happening. But we will be moving forward with the implementation of full-day kindergarten. It just will not be part of the discussion with referendum.
Thank you, Dr. Malash. Does anybody have any questions about my report with the security project or the referendum or anything for Dr. Malash about full-day kindergarten? No? Okay. Back to you, Dr. Dickinson.
Thank you, Mrs. Matlack. I will add something, though. The folks that are on the BNF committee got a preview of the security cameras over Barclay, of which there are 36, 38, 42 cameras in one elementary school. But the ability to monitor what's going on both inside and outside the school, in both during daylight hours and in the evening, is extraordinary. To have 40 different cameras up on one computer screen, be able to see everything that's going on in an extremely clearly manner was just amazing. So to have those sort of security plans in all the schools in the district, I think is going to be a fantastic move forward. So if you haven't seen it, maybe you can ask Dr. Malash to set that up for us so we can all see that.
November committee meetings, Dr. Dickinson. November committee meetings. We're excited.
All right, so we'll move into our second public discussion. You may now comment on any issue. When you come to the mic, please state your name and address. You will have 3 minutes for your remarks. So if anybody has anything they want to share with us this evening?
Minor thing, but in the past with Park, we've talked about sanctions from the state and what that could mean. In order to have a full understanding of what it means, would be good to know what the latest thinking is in terms of how do we get punished, or is that on the table for this coming year, or that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Dr. Mahan, other than participation rates, we have not heard anything different, correct? So it was still at the 95% participation rate is what we were looking at. Use your microphone, please.
We had to do a corrective action plan a few years ago to increase our park participation. We had to demonstrate to the state that we had actionable steps that we were going to implement. And as you could see from the presentation, we have done that, and we have increased all of our numbers across the board. So we have not heard from the state. So we hope to continue with that trend.
Anybody else? No? Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Mrs. Judge and Mrs. Scarpolino. Good night, everybody. Thank you for coming out.